The clock on the wall showed 2:17 a.m. when David finally pulled off his scrubs and tossed them in the laundry bin. His feet ached, his back was stiff, and all he wanted was to get home, maybe grab something to eat and fall into bed. 16 hours in the emergency room would do that to anyone. It had been one of those shifts where nothing went according to plan. A car accident brought in 4 people at once, then a kid with a broken arm, then an elderly woman struggling to breathe. No breaks, no time to even drink water properly. David worked as a nurse in a busy Seattle hospital. At 34, he had seen enough emergencies to know that some nights just hit different. Tonight was one of them. He grabbed his jacket from his locker, waved goodbye to the night shift crew coming in, and headed out into the cold darkness of the parking lot. The November air bit at his face as he walked to his car. Seattle in late autumn meant rain, wind, and that damp cold that seemed to seep into your bones. He started the engine and sat for a moment, letting the heater warm up, his head resting against the seat. The radio played something soft and forgettable. He was too tired to even change the station. His phone sat in the cup holder where he had left it hours ago. The screen lit up showing 3 missed calls from his dad and a text from his roommate asking if he wanted pizza tomorrow. David smiled at that. Pizza sounded good. Everything sounded good when you were this exhausted and hungry. He was about to pull out of the parking spot when his phone rang. The number on the screen was unknown. No name, just digits he did not recognize. David normally never answered calls like this. Spam, telemarketers, wrong numbers. Nothing good came from unknown numbers at 2 in the morning. He reached to decline the call, but something made him pause. Maybe it was instinct from years of working in emergency medicine. Maybe it was just coincidence. His thumb hovered over the red decline button, then moved to the green accept button instead. Hello? His voice came out rough and tired. Oh, thank God someone answered. The woman's voice on the other end was shaking, barely holding together. Please, I need help. My father, he's not breathing right and I don't know what to do. David sat up straight, suddenly very awake. Okay, slow down. Tell me what's happening. He was fine, he was sleeping, and then I heard this noise from his room. The words tumbled out fast, panic making her voice higher. He's awake, but he's gasping like he can't get air in. And his lips look wrong, they look blue, and I called 911, but they said it would be 15 minutes and I can't just stand here and watch him. Hey, listen to me. David kept his voice calm and steady, the same voice he used with scared patients in the ER. You did the right thing calling for help. You're doing good. What's your name? Elena. My name is Elena. Okay, Elena, I'm David. I'm a nurse. You called what you thought was a medical helpline, right? Yes, the crisis hotline number my father's doctor gave us. I have it written down right here. You're 1 number off, David said gently. But that's okay. I can help you. Is your father conscious? Can he respond to you? There was a pause, then Elena's voice came back, a little steadier. Dad, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. Another pause. Yes, he squeezed my hand. Good, that's really good. David put his car in park and turned off the engine. He was not going anywhere. Is he sitting up or lying down? He's in bed, lying flat. I need you to help him sit up. Get some pillows behind his back. Sitting up will help him breathe easier. David heard movement on the other end, Elena's breathing heavy as she worked. Okay, he's sitting up now. Does that help? Dad, does that help? His color, is it getting any better? I think so, maybe. His lips don't look as blue. Okay, good. Now I want you to check something for me. Put your fingers on the inside of his wrist like you're checking for a pulse. Can you feel it? Yes. Is it fast, slow, regular, or all over the place? Elena was quiet for a moment, concentrating. It's fast. Really fast. But it's steady, I think. David ran through possibilities in his mind. Fast heartbeat, trouble breathing, sudden onset. Could be a dozen things. Does your father have any heart problems? Any medications he takes? He had a stroke 2 years ago. He takes blood thinners and something for his blood pressure. Oh God, is this another stroke? Elena, listen to me. You're doing great. Help is on the way. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until they get there, okay? How many minutes has it been since you called 911? Maybe 5 minutes? I don't know, time feels weird right now. That's normal. Everything feels different when you're scared. Tell me about your father. What's his name? Roberto. His name is Roberto. Why are you asking that? There was suspicion in her voice now, mixed with the fear. Because I want you to talk to him. Keep him calm, keep yourself calm. Tell him the paramedics are coming. Tell him about something normal, something good. Can you do that? David heard Elena take a shaky breath. Then her voice, softer now, speaking in Spanish to her father. He could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Loving, reassuring, trying so hard to be strong, is he responding? David asked after a moment. He nodded. He can't talk, but he nodded. That's good. That's really good, Elena. You're doing everything right. They stayed on the line together. David talked her through checking Roberto's breathing every minute, making sure he stayed sitting upright, watching for any changes. Elena's voice slowly became less panicked, more focused. She told David about how her father used to be so strong, how he worked construction for 40 years, how the stroke had changed everything. He raised me by himself after my mom died, Elena said quietly. I was 10. He never remarried, just worked and made sure I had everything I needed. Now it's my turn to take care of him. You moved back home to care for him 2 years ago. I was teaching art in California, had my own apartment, my own life. Then he had the stroke and I came home to Phoenix. Someone had to be here. David heard something in her voice beyond the immediate fear. Loneliness, maybe. The weight of being the only one carrying something heavy. He knew that feeling. That's not easy, he said simply. No, but he's my dad. What else was I going to do? The sound of sirens came through the phone, faint at first, then louder. I hear them, Elena said, relief flooding her voice. They're here, they're pulling up. Go let them in. Take your phone with you. I'll wait. David sat in his dark car in the hospital parking lot, listening to the distant sounds of paramedics arriving, equipment being moved, professional voices asking questions. He heard Elena explaining what happened, heard the calm efficiency of the emergency crew taking over. His job was done. He should hang up now, but he did not. Several minutes passed. Then Elena's voice came back on the line, quieter now. They're taking him to the hospital. They said his oxygen was really low, but it's better now. They think maybe a blood clot or fluid in his lungs. They need to run tests. You saved his life tonight, David said. Getting help fast, keeping him calm, sitting him up. You did all the right things. I called the wrong number. Sometimes the wrong number is the right number. Elena laughed, a small sound that was half laugh, half sob. I don't even know who you are. I mean, you said you're a nurse named David, but you could be anyone. I work at Seattle General Hospital, emergency department. I just got off a 16-hour shift when you called. I was sitting in my car about to drive home. Seattle. You're in Seattle? Yeah. I'm in Phoenix. They both went quiet, processing this strange fact. Two strangers over 1,000 miles apart, connected by a misdialed number in the middle of the night. Thank you, Elena said softly. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do, and you just stayed with me. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, David said and meant it. Why? It was a good question. Why did he answer an unknown number at 2 a.m? Why did he stay on the line for 20 minutes when he could barely keep his eyes open? Why did something in this stranger's voice make him want to help? Because you needed help, he said finally. And because I know what it's like to be scared and alone when someone you love is in danger? Elena was quiet for a moment. You lost someone. It was not a question. David looked out at the dark parking lot, at the emergency room entrance where ambulances sat waiting for the next crisis. My brother, 7 years ago, overdose. I was the one who found him. I knew CPR, I did everything I was supposed to do, but it was too late. That's why I became a nurse. I'm sorry. Me too. David rubbed his eyes. Listen, I should let you go. You need to get to the hospital. Wait. Elena's voice was urgent. Can I call you? I mean later, to update you about my dad? Or would that be weird? David smiled despite his exhaustion. That wouldn't be weird. I'd like to know how he's doing. Okay, thank you, David. Really, thank you. You're welcome, Elena. Take care of your dad. He ended the call and sat in the silence of his car. The heater had turned off and the cold was creeping back in. He should go home. He should sleep. He had another shift in 12 hours, but something had shifted in those 20 minutes. Something small but real, a connection made across distance and circumstance, a voice in the dark that sounded like it understood. David started his car and drove home through the empty streets of Seattle. He did not know if Elena would actually call again. People said things in moments of crisis they did not always mean later. That was okay. He had helped someone tonight and that was enough, except it was not the end. 3 days later, his phone rang with that same Phoenix number, and when he answered, Elena's voice on the other end changed everything. David was halfway through his lunch break, eating a sandwich in the hospital cafeteria, when his phone buzzed. The Phoenix number lit up his screen. 3 days had passed since that late-night call, and he had thought about Elena more than he wanted to admit. Wondering if her father was okay. Wondering if she was okay. Hello? David, it's Elena from Phoenix. I hope I'm not bothering you. No, not at all. How's your dad? He's home. Relief filled her voice. It was a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in his lung. The doctor said if I hadn't gotten help when I did, if he had stayed lying flat. She trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. But you did get help. He's okay now? Yeah, they have him on different medications now, stronger blood thinners. He has to see a specialist next week, but he's breathing normally again. He's stubborn and already complaining about not being allowed to do yard work, so I know he's feeling better. David laughed. That's always a good sign. Patients who complain are patients who are healing. I wanted to call and thank you properly. I've been thinking about that night, about how you just stayed on the phone with me. You didn't know me. You could have just told me to wait for the paramedics and hung up. I'm glad I didn't. There was a pause, comfortable rather than awkward. David could hear music playing softly in the background on Elena's end, something with a piano. Is that Thelonious Monk? He asked. You know Monk? Surprise lifted her voice. Nobody ever recognizes Monk. Everyone knows Miles Davis or John Coltrane, but Monk is like this secret club. My mom loved jazz. The weirder the better. She used to play Monk albums while she cooked dinner. I grew up thinking all music was supposed to sound a little off-kilter and strange. A little off-kilter and strange is the best kind of music, Elena said. I play it for my students sometimes and they look at me like I'm from another planet. You teach? High school art, or I did in California. Now I substitute teach here in Phoenix when I can, but mostly I'm home with my dad. It's hard to commit to a full-time position when I never know if he's going to have a bad day. David heard something unspoken in those words. The life she had put on hold. The career that was waiting somewhere in the distance. He knew about putting things aside for family. After his brother died, he had delayed nursing school for a year to help his parents through their grief. That must be hard, he said. Some days more than others. Today is actually a good day. My dad is napping, the house is quiet, and I'm drinking terrible instant coffee and pretending it's fancy espresso. Terrible instant coffee is a universal constant. We have it here at the hospital too. I'm convinced they make it in the same factory no matter what brand name is on the jar. Elena laughed, a real laugh this time. Okay, so tell me about Seattle. I've never been. Is it really as rainy as everyone says? Right now I'm looking out the window and it's raining, so yeah, the rumors are true. They talked for another 15 minutes before David had to get back to work. Elena made him promise to tell her if he was ever too busy to talk. He promised, but he already knew he would make time. That was the first call. Then there was a second one 2 days later. Elena called to ask a medical question about her father's medication, but the conversation drifted to other things. Books they both loved. Movies they had watched too many times. The small frustrations of daily life. Then a third call. A fourth. Within a week, they were talking every day. David would call during his breaks at work, standing outside in the rain because the cafeteria was too loud. Elena would call in the evenings after her father went to bed, sitting on her back porch with a cup of tea. Sometimes they talked for 10 minutes. Sometimes they talked for over an hour. They developed rhythms and patterns. David learned that Elena was a morning person who woke up before sunrise to paint in the quiet hours. Elena learned that David was a night owl who did his best thinking after midnight. David learned that Elena spoke Spanish with her father but thought in English. Elena learned that David had tried to learn guitar 3 times and failed 3 times because he could not make his fingers coordinate properly. I'm convinced musical talent skipped me entirely, David said one night, walking home from the bus stop after a shift. My mom could play piano, my brother could play drums, and I can barely clap on beat. But you're good with your hands in other ways, Elena pointed out. You start IVs and do medical procedures. That takes coordination. That's different. That's science and practice. Music is like magic. Either you have it or you don't. I don't believe that. I think you just haven't found your instrument yet. David smiled even though she could not see it. Maybe. What about you? Do you play anything? I used to play violin when I was younger. My mom taught me before she died. I haven't picked it up in years, though. It's in a case somewhere in my closet. Why did you stop? Elena was quiet for a moment. After she died, it hurt too much. Every time I played, all I could think about was her hands guiding mine, her voice telling me to relax my bow arm. Eventually, I just put it away. Maybe someday you'll want to play again. Maybe. Do you ever do that? Put something away because it reminds you too much of someone you lost? David thought about his brother's leather jacket, still hanging in his closet. He could not wear it, but he could not get rid of it either. Yeah, he said quietly. I do. They talked about grief sometimes in the spaces between lighter conversations. Both of them understood loss in a way that did not need explanation. David's brother, Elena's mother, the holes that people left behind when they were gone, it created a kind of understanding between them, a recognition that some pain never fully healed, but you learned to carry it differently. Other times, they talked about nothing important at all. Elena told him about the mockingbird that had built a nest outside her kitchen window and sang at dawn. David told her about the regular patient who came to the emergency room once a month, with a new dramatic complaint that was never quite as serious as he claimed. They sent each other photos of things that made them laugh. A terrible hospital cafeteria meal, a sunset over the Phoenix Mountains, a cat sleeping in a bizarre position. It was easy. That was what surprised David most. Talking to Elena was easy in a way that talking to people rarely was. He did not have to explain himself or edit his thoughts. She understood what he meant, even when he did not quite say it right. 2 weeks in, Elena sent him a photo of a painting she was working on, abstract shapes in blues and greens like water and sky mixing together. It's beautiful, David texted back. It's not finished yet. I'm not sure what it wants to be. Does a painting know what it wants to be? The good ones do. You start with an idea, but then the painting tells you where it needs to go. You just have to listen. David thought about that during a quiet moment at work. The idea that creation had its own voice, its own direction. That you could start one place and end up somewhere completely different, and that was okay. He called her that night. I've been thinking about what you said, about paintings knowing what they want to be. Yeah, I think people are like that too sometimes. We start out thinking we're going one direction, and then life tells us we're supposed to go another way. Like becoming a nurse instead of whatever you thought you'd be before? Exactly. I was studying business in college when my brother died. I thought I was going to work in some office, wear a suit, do spreadsheets. Then everything changed, and I realized I wanted to help people, actually help them. Not just in some abstract corporate way. Do you regret it? The business degree you didn't finish? Not even a little bit. Some of the worst days at the hospital are still better than the best days I can imagine sitting in a cubicle. Elena laughed. I get that. I thought I was going to be a gallery artist, showing my work in museums and selling paintings for thousands of dollars. Instead, I'm teaching teenagers who mostly just want to use art class to avoid doing real work. But you know what? Some of those kids really see things, really look at the world in interesting ways, and helping them find that is better than any gallery show. You miss it, though. Teaching full-time. Yeah, I miss having my own classroom, my own students. Substitute teaching is fine, but you're always the outsider. You come in, manage the class for a day, and leave. No real connection. But it's what I can do right now, so it's what I do. David heard the acceptance in her voice, but also the quiet disappointment. The dreams deferred. What would you do if you could do anything, he asked, if there were no limitations? That's a big question for a Tuesday night. Humor me. Elena sighed, but it was a thoughtful sigh. Okay, if I could do anything, I'd spend a year in Italy. Florence maybe, or Rome. I'd paint every day and visit museums and take classes from actual masters. I'd learn to really see light and shadow the way the Renaissance painters did. Then I'd come back and teach, but I'd know things. Real things. Not just what I learned from textbooks. That sounds amazing. It's a fantasy. I can't leave my dad for a year. I can't afford it even if I could leave. It's just something I think about sometimes. Dreams don't have to happen right now to be real, David said. They can wait. They can change shape. But they're still there. What's your dream? Nobody had asked him that in a long time. David walked to his apartment window and looked out at the Seattle skyline. Lights reflected on wet streets. I think I'm doing it, he said slowly. Working as a nurse, helping people, making a difference in small ways every day. But if I'm being honest, there's something else. Something I don't talk about much. Tell me. I want to do medical work in places that really need it. Disaster relief, refugee camps, places where people don't have access to basic health care. I've looked into organizations that do that kind of work. Doctors Without Borders, stuff like that. But it requires commitment. You have to go for months at a time, sometimes a year. And I have my parents here, my dad's getting older. And I don't want to be halfway across the world if something happens. So you're waiting too? Yeah, I guess we're both waiting. They were quiet for a moment, thinking about the lives they wanted and the lives they had, the distance between the two. Can I tell you something weird? Elena asked. Please do. I feel like I know you better after 2 weeks of phone calls than I know people I've worked with for 2 years. How does that happen? David smiled. I was thinking the same thing. I haven't told most people about the Doctors Without Borders idea. I haven't talked to anyone about my brother in months except my therapist. But with you, it just comes out naturally. Maybe it's because we're not face to face. It's easier to be honest when you're just a voice on the phone. Maybe, or maybe we just click. Yeah, Elena said softly. Maybe we do. 3 weeks after that first call, they had fallen into a routine. David would text her when he woke up, usually something silly or a photo of his breakfast. Elena would text back with a painting or a thought for the day. They would call during his lunch break if their schedules aligned. They would talk again in the evening. Longer conversations that stretched until one of them had to force themselves to hang up and go to sleep. David's roommate noticed. You're on your phone a lot lately. New girlfriend? Just a friend, David said, but the words felt incomplete. Elena's father noticed too. ¿Quién es? He asked in Spanish, hearing her laugh on the phone in the other room. Un amigo, Elena replied. A friend. But both of them were starting to realize it was more than that. Neither of them wanted to say it out loud yet. Neither of them wanted to acknowledge the obvious problem. They lived over 1,000 miles apart. They had never met in person. This whole thing was built on phone calls and text messages and a connection that should not be as strong as it was. Then came the Thursday night call that changed everything. David was at home, finally off for 3 days straight. Elena was on her back porch wrapped in a blanket because the desert got cold at night in November. I have something to tell you, she said, and her voice was different, shaky. What's wrong? My dad, he's back in the hospital. They rushed him in an hour ago. His heart. They think it's a heart attack. David sat up straight. Where are you now? Waiting room. Surgical wing. They took him into emergency surgery 20 minutes ago. It's going to be hours before I know anything. Eleanor. I'm alone again. I have no one here. My aunt lives in Texas, my cousin is in Mexico, and everyone else is scattered everywhere. It's just me in this waiting room, and I can't stop thinking about what happens if he doesn't make it. If I lose him like I lost my mom, if I end up completely alone. Her voice broke on the last word. David stood up, already moving toward his bedroom without thinking. How long did they say the surgery would take? 4 to 6 hours, maybe longer. I'm going to stay on the phone with you. The whole time if you need me to. You don't have to do that. You're off work, you should rest. Elena, listen to me. I'm going to be right here with you. You're not alone. He heard her crying softly, trying to muffle it. I'm so tired, David. I'm so tired of being strong all the time. Then don't be strong right now. Just be honest. I'm here. They talked through the long hours of waiting. Sometimes Elena cried. Sometimes she was silent, just needing to know he was there. Sometimes she told stories about her father, memories from childhood, the good times before the stroke changed everything. David listened and responded and stayed on the line like he promised. But somewhere in those hours, sitting alone in his Seattle apartment, while she sat alone in that Phoenix waiting room, something became crystal clear. He cared about this woman. Really cared, more than he had cared about anyone in a long time. And she was going through something terrible alone 1,200 miles away. It was not enough to just be a voice on a phone. Not anymore. When the call finally ended around 2 in the morning with news that her father was out of surgery and stable, David made a decision. He was going to Phoenix. David woke up Friday morning with his mind already made up. He had barely slept after getting off the phone with Elena at 2 in the morning, but he felt strangely alert, clear, like everything had suddenly clicked into focus. He grabbed his phone and opened the airline app. Seattle to Phoenix, flights today. The screen loaded and his heart sank. Every single flight showed the same red text. Cancelled. A massive storm system had swept through the southwest overnight, grounding planes across 3 states. The earliest available flight was Sunday afternoon, 2 days away. 2 days. Elena's father had just come out of major heart surgery. She was alone in that hospital right now, probably exhausted, definitely scared. 2 days felt like forever. David sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the canceled flight listings. His shift didn't start until Monday. He had 3 full days off. 3 days he had been planning to spend doing nothing, catching up on sleep, maybe cleaning his apartment. Normal, boring, restful things. He opened Google Maps instead. Seattle to Phoenix. The route appeared on his phone screen. A long red line stretching down the entire western coast and then cutting inland across desert. Find 420 miles. 21 hours and 18 minutes of driving. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. He would have to drive through the night, push through exhaustion, spend money on gas and probably terrible rest stop coffee. For what? To show up at a hospital where he would probably just sit in another waiting room, because he wasn't family and they wouldn't let him see Roberto anyway. But Elena would be there, and she wouldn't be alone anymore. David stood up and started packing. He threw clothes into his duffel bag without thinking too much about it. Jeans, a few shirts, his toothbrush, phone charger. He grabbed the emergency roadside kit his dad had given him last Christmas, still in its packaging. He filled up 2 water bottles and made a thermos of coffee that would probably be cold before he even left the city. But it was something. His roommate knocked on his door. "You okay in there? I heard you moving around." David opened the door. "I need to borrow your car." "What? Why, where's your car?" "My car is fine, but yours is better for long distance. Yours has that new sound system and better gas mileage." His roommate looked confused. "How long distance are we talking?" "Phoenix." "Phoenix? Like Arizona Phoenix? That's like 1,000,000 miles away." "It's 1,020 miles. I checked." "Okay, I'm clearly missing something here. Why are you driving to Phoenix right now? Like right this second?" David sat down on his bed and explained. The whole thing. The wrong number 3 weeks ago, the daily calls. Elena and her father, last night's emergency, the canceled flights. His roommate listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from confused to understanding. "So, you're driving 21 hours to see a girl you've never actually met in person," his roommate said when David finished. "When you say it like that, it sounds insane." "It is insane, but it's also kind of amazing." His roommate grinned. "Keys are on the hook by the door. Bring her back some coffee. I hear gas station coffee gets weird in the desert." David hugged him, grabbed the keys, and was on the road by 8 in the morning. The first few hours were easy. He knew the stretch of highway heading south from Seattle. He had driven it dozens of times for weekend trips to Portland or the Oregon coast. The rain followed him for the first 90 miles, typical Pacific Northwest weather. Then gradually the clouds started to break apart and patches of blue appeared. He called Elena around 10 using his Bluetooth so he could keep driving. "Hey, how are you doing?" he asked when she answered. "Tired. Dad's still sedated. They said maybe this afternoon he'll wake up enough to talk. I stayed here all night. I think I slept for maybe an hour total in this horrible plastic chair. You need to go home and sleep properly. I can't leave him. Elena, you're not going to be any good to him if you collapse from exhaustion. He's in the ICU. He's being monitored constantly. Go home for a few hours. Sleep in your actual bed. Take a shower. Then come back." She was quiet for a moment. "You're probably right. I'm definitely right. I'm a medical professional. We know these things." That got a small laugh from her. "Okay, Dr. Professional, I'll go home. But just for a little while." "Good. Text me when you wake up, okay?" "I will. Thank you for last night. For staying on the phone with me through all of that." "Anytime," David said, and meant it more than she knew. He drove through Oregon, watching the landscape change from thick forest to open farmland. The GPS cheerfully informed him that he was making good time. Only 17 more hours to go. He laughed at that. Only 17 hours. Like it was nothing. Around noon, he stopped for gas at a station that looked like it had been there since the 1960s and hadn't been updated since. An old man sat behind the counter reading a paperback Western novel, barely looking up when David came in to pay. "Long drive?" the old man asked, glancing at the out-of-state plates through the window. "Yeah, going to Phoenix." "Phoenix. That's a haul." "You got someone waiting for you there?" David thought about how to answer that. "Yeah, I do." The old man nodded like that explained everything. Good reason to drive then. Safe travels. Back on the road, David put on music. His mom's old jazz playlist that he had never deleted from his phone. Thelonious Monk came on and he thought about Elena recognizing it immediately that first time they really talked. Most people didn't know Monk, but she did. The highway stretched ahead of him, endless and straight through southern Oregon. Other cars passed him going the opposite direction. Everyone with their own stories, their own reasons for being on this road. He wondered how many of them were doing something as impulsive as he was. Probably not many. His mind wandered as he drove. He thought about the first time Elena called, her voice panicked and desperate. He thought about how that panic had transformed over 3 weeks into laughter, into trust, into something that felt like coming home even though they had never been in the same room together. People didn't do this, right? Drive 21 hours for someone they had never met? This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not real life. Real life was sensible. Real life was cautious. Real life was protecting yourself from disappointment. But David had spent too much of his life being careful after his brother died. Careful with his emotions, careful with his trust, careful with his heart. And where had that gotten him? Lonely, going through the motions. Safe but not really living. Maybe it was time to do something completely unreasonable. He crossed into California around 3 in the afternoon. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Home now. About to sleep. Thank you for telling me to do this. I didn't realize how much I needed it. He smiled and sent back a thumbs up, not wanting to distract her from resting. The California stretch was long. So long. Miles and miles of highway that all looked the same. He stopped twice more for gas and terrible coffee that tasted like it had been made 3 days ago and reheated in a microwave. The cashier at the second stop was a young woman with bright purple hair who looked bored out of her mind. You look tired, she said, scanning his coffee and bag of pretzels. Long drive. Where you headed? Phoenix. Oh man, you've got hours left. You driving straight through? That's the plan. You're either running from something or running toward something. Nobody drives like this unless it's one of those two things. David handed her his card. Running toward something, she grinned. Good for you. Hope it's worth it. Me too, David said. Back in the car, the sun was starting to lower toward the horizon. He had been driving for almost 8 hours and his back was starting to complain about it. He adjusted his seat, rolled his shoulders, and kept going. Elena called around 6. I slept for 4 hours. I feel almost human again. Good, you heading back to the hospital? Yeah, they said Dad woke up for a little while. He was confused, but he recognized the nurse. That's a good sign. That's a great sign. Confusion is normal after surgery and sedation. Recognition means his brain is working right. When did you become so smart about hearts? I work in an ER, we see everything. Hearts, lungs, broken bones, weird rashes, people who stuck things in places things should not be stuck. Elena laughed. Okay, I don't need details about that last one. Trust me, you really don't. They talked for another 20 minutes before Elena had to go. David didn't tell her where he was. He wanted it to be a surprise. Though as the miles continued to pile up, he started to wonder if this surprise was a good idea or a terrible one. What if she didn't want him there? What if showing up was too much, too intense, too fast? What if seeing him in person broke whatever magic existed through the phone? David pushed those thoughts away and focused on the road. The sun set somewhere in Central California, painting the sky in oranges and pinks before fading to deep purple. Then darkness settled in completely and it was just him, his headlights, and the endless white lines on the highway. He passed through towns with names he would forget by morning. He saw trucks hauling cargo through the night, their drivers probably making runs they had made 100 times before. He saw signs for hotels and rest stops and tourist attractions that were closed for the night. Somewhere around 10, he pulled into a rest area and got out to stretch. His legs were stiff, his eyes were tired, and he still had hours to go. The rest area was nearly empty except for a family with small kids running around, burning off energy while their parents looked exhausted. David walked to the vending machine and stared at the options. Nothing looked good. Everything looked like it had been there since the last presidential election. He bought a bag of chips anyway and sat at a picnic table under a fluorescent light, eating mechanically while moths circled overhead. His phone showed 11:47. He had been driving for almost 16 hours. 5 more hours to Phoenix. 5 more hours and he would see her. The nervous energy that had carried him through the first half of the drive was wearing off, replaced by the reality of what he was doing. He was about to show up at a hospital in a city where he knew no one except Elena. He was about to walk into her life in a very real, very physical way. There was no taking this back, no pretending it was casual. This meant something. This drive meant something. David threw away his empty chip bag, got back in the car, and kept driving. The highway cut through the darkness. Occasionally, he would pass through a small town, streetlights creating brief pools of illumination before the darkness swallowed the road again. He drove through mountains and valleys and across long, flat stretches where he could see nothing but the stars above and the road ahead. His phone GPS showed he was in Arizona now. The desert surrounded him, invisible in the darkness but present somehow, different from the green wetness of Seattle, different from the farmland of Oregon, different from everything familiar. Around 2 a.m, tiredness hit him like a wave. His eyes kept trying to close. His head felt heavy. He pulled over at a gas station that was blazing with light in the middle of nowhere, one of those 24-hour places that catered to truck drivers and people making questionable life decisions at unreasonable hours. Inside, the coffee was surprisingly decent. The clerk was an older woman reading a romance novel behind the counter. She looked up when David came in. "You look like you've been driving forever," she said, close to it. "Seattle to Phoenix," she whistled low. "That's a commitment." "Almost there, though." "Yeah. Another hour, maybe. Someone special waiting for you?" "I hope so," the woman smiled. "She's lucky. Not many people would drive like that." David paid for his coffee and headed back out into the night. One more hour, just one more hour, and he would know if this crazy, impulsive, completely unreasonable drive was the best decision or the worst decision he had ever made. The Phoenix lights appeared on the horizon around 3 a.m. First just a glow against the dark sky, then gradually becoming individual lights, buildings, streets. The city spread out across the desert floor, bigger than he had imagined. He followed the GPS directions to the hospital, his heart beating faster now. He was really doing this. He was really here. The hospital parking lot was mostly empty at this hour. David pulled into a spot and turned off the engine. Silence filled the car. His hands were shaking slightly from exhaustion and adrenaline and caffeine and nerves. He had driven through the night. He had crossed 3 states. He was here. Now he just had to walk through those hospital doors and find her. David sat in the parking lot for 5 full minutes, trying to work up the courage to get out of the car. His body ached from sitting for so long. His eyes burned from staring at the road. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, though he wasn't sure if that was from exhaustion or nerves or both. Through the windshield, he could see the hospital entrance, automatic doors opening and closing as a nurse in scrubs walked out to her car. The building was mostly dark except for certain floors that blazed with light. The ICU would be up there somewhere. Elena would be up there somewhere. What was he supposed to say? "Surprise, I drove 21 hours because I couldn't stand the thought of you being alone." That sounded intense even in his own head. Maybe he should text her first, warn her he was here. But that felt wrong too. He had come all this way. He needed to just walk in there and face whatever happened next. David grabbed his phone and keys, locked the car, and headed toward the entrance. The hospital at 3 a.m. had a strange quality to it. Quiet but not silent. The emergency room entrance was separate, so the main lobby was nearly empty. Just a security guard at a desk, an older man who looked up when David walked in. "Help you?" the guard asked. "I'm here to see someone. ICU." The guard checked his watch. "Visiting hours don't start until 8. "I know, but I drove from Seattle. Just got here. I just need to see if she's okay." Something in David's voice must have conveyed how far he had come, how much this mattered. The guard studied him for a moment, then nodded. "ICU is 4th floor. Elevators are that way. But they might not let you up. ICU has strict rules about visitors, especially this time of night." "I understand. Thank you." David walked to the elevators on legs that felt unsteady. The ride up to the 4th floor took only seconds but felt longer. When the doors opened, he stepped out into a corridor that smelled like disinfectant and floor cleaner. Signs on the wall pointed toward different units. ICU to the right. He followed the signs until he reached a set of double doors with a call button and an intercom. Beyond the doors, he could see a nurse's station with 2 nurses working, their faces lit by computer screens. To the left was a small waiting area, Elena was there. She sat in one of those uncomfortable hospital chairs, the kind with thin padding and armrests that dug into your sides. Her head was tilted back against the wall, eyes closed, one hand holding her phone loosely in her lap. She wore jeans and a dark blue sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even exhausted and worried, even in the harsh fluorescent light of a hospital waiting room, she was beautiful. David's heart did something complicated in his chest. He must have made a sound, or maybe she just sensed someone standing there because her eyes opened. She looked at him without recognition for a second, her brain not quite processing what she was seeing. Then understanding dawned across her face. David? His name came out as barely a whisper, like she was afraid if she said it too loud he would disappear. Yeah, it's me. Elena stood up slowly, her phone slipping from her hand onto the chair. She took a step toward him, then another, like she was testing whether he was real or some kind of exhaustion-induced hallucination. What are you doing here? How are you here? I drove. You drove? From Seattle? All the flights were canceled because of the storm. So I drove. That's so far. That's 20 hours, 21 actually. But who's counting? Elena closed the remaining distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. David hugged her back, and it was the strangest thing. They had never touched before, never been in the same room before, but somehow it felt completely natural, like his arms knew exactly where to go, like her head fit perfectly against his shoulder. She was crying. He could feel her shaking against him, could feel the tears soaking into his shirt. I can't believe you're here, she said, her voice muffled. I can't believe you drove all night to be here. I couldn't let you go through this alone, but you don't even know me. Not really. We've just talked on the phone. David pulled back slightly so he could see her face. Her eyes were red from crying and lack of sleep, but they were the warmest brown he had ever seen. I know you, he said quietly. Maybe not in the traditional way, but I know you. I know you put everyone else before yourself. I know you drink terrible instant coffee and pretend it's good. I know you paint in the early morning because that's when the light is best. I know you gave up your life in California to take care of your dad, because that's who you are. I know you. Elena laughed and cried at the same time. You're insane. You know that, right? Driving 21 hours for someone you met through a wrong number is completely insane. Yeah, probably. But I'm here anyway. They sat down in the waiting area chairs and Elena filled him in on everything. Her father had come through the surgery better than expected. The blockage in his artery had been severe, but they had caught it in time. He would need cardiac rehab, medication adjustments, lifestyle changes. But he was alive. He was going to be okay. They let me see him for a few minutes an hour ago, Elena said. He was awake. Groggy, but awake. He asked where I had been, and I told him I went home to sleep. He told me I looked tired anyway and should go home again. Even after heart surgery, he's trying to take care of me. That's what parents do, David said. What about you? You must be exhausted. When did you leave Seattle? 8 this morning. Yesterday morning, I guess. Time is kind of blurry right now. David, that's 19 hours ago. You've been driving for 19 straight hours? I stopped a few times. Gas, coffee, questionable rest stop food. Elena shook her head in disbelief. You need to sleep? There's a hotel 2 blocks from here. Let me call and make sure they have a room. I'm not leaving you here alone. That's the whole reason I came. I'm not alone anymore. You're here, and you're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way yesterday. She was right, and David knew it. The adrenaline that had carried him through the final hours of the drive was wearing off. The exhaustion was catching up fast, making his thoughts fuzzy and his reactions slow. Okay, he agreed. But only if you promise to text me if anything changes with your dad. I promise. Elena called the hotel and confirmed they had rooms available. She walked with David down to the lobby, neither of them wanting to say goodbye even though they had only been together for maybe 20 minutes. This is surreal, Elena said as they stood near the entrance. 3 weeks ago I dialed a wrong number. Now you're here. In Phoenix. In person. Life is weird sometimes. Good weird or bad weird? David smiled. Definitely good weird. Elena reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and fit between his like they were meant to be there. Thank you, she said, for driving all night, for caring enough to do something this crazy. I don't think anyone has ever done anything like this for me before. Then people have been idiots, she laughed. and the sound made every mile of that drive worth it. David walked to the hotel in the cool pre-dawn desert air. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when he checked in, just handed him a keycard and pointed toward the elevators. His room was small and basic but clean. He sent Elena a text letting her know he had arrived safely, then collapsed onto the bed without even taking off his shoes. He slept for 6 hours straight, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that came from complete exhaustion. When he woke up, it was almost noon and his phone showed 3 messages from Elena. Dad is doing better this morning. More alert. Doctor said the surgery went perfectly. He should be able to go home in a few days if he keeps improving. Hope you're sleeping well. Take your time. I'm okay. David smiled and texted back. Just woke up. Heading to shower, then coming back to the hospital. Have you eaten anything? Her reply came quickly. Does hospital vending machine coffee count as food? Absolutely not. I'm bringing real food. David showered, feeling almost human again, and changed into clean clothes. He walked around the neighborhood near the hospital until he found a small Mexican restaurant. The owner, a woman probably in her 60s, gave him recommendations and packed up enough food for 3 people even though he tried to order for 2. You look like you need more than that, she said. Trust me, I know. Back at the hospital, David found Elena in the same waiting area. She looked better than she had at 3 in the morning, still tired but more present. She had changed clothes at some point, now wearing a simple gray dress and a cardigan. You brought food, she said, her face lighting up when she saw the bags he was carrying. The lady at the restaurant seemed to think we needed enough to feed a small army. They ate in the waiting area, the smell of fresh tortillas and seasoned meat making David realize he hadn't eaten a real meal since yesterday morning in Seattle. Elena made happy sounds with every bite. This is so much better than vending machine food, she said. I didn't realize how hungry I was. When was the last time you ate an actual meal? Elena thought about it. Thursday lunch, maybe? What day is it now? Friday. Almost Saturday, really, so yeah, Thursday. That's bad, isn't it? That's very bad. No wonder you're tired. You can't run on just coffee and worry. They finished eating and Elena took David to see her father through the ICU window. Roberto was awake, with tubes and monitors connected to him, but looking surprisingly good for someone who had just had major heart surgery. He saw them standing there and gave a small wave. A nurse came out. You can go in for a few minutes if you want. Just immediate family, though. Elena looked at David apologetically. I'll just be a minute. Take your time. I'll be right here. David watched through the window as Elena went to her father's bedside. He saw Roberto's face change when he saw his daughter, love and relief clear even from a distance. Elena held his hand and talked to him. Roberto said something that made her laugh. Then he looked toward the window where David stood and said something else. Elena turned to look at David, then back at her father, then back at David again. She was shaking her head but smiling. When she came back out a few minutes later, she was blushing. What did he say? David asked. He asked who you were. I told him you were a friend who came to visit. He said friends don't drive 21 hours. He said only someone who cares a lot would do that. He's a smart man. He wants to meet you properly, once he's out of ICU and feeling better. I'd like that. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. Elena showed David photos on her phone from before her father's stroke. Roberto as a younger man, strong and smiling, with Elena as a little girl on his shoulders.